Hello friends, I'm Kayla and it's time for episode 3 of reading other people's 2024 favorite books. I don't know if anyone thinks that this video series is like dragging things out and I should have just done one episode like I used to, but I just want to tell you, I love the way that I'm doing this. I love that I get to focus on one social media site at a time and I'm pitting them against each other. And if I wasn't making content, like this is how I would be reading anyway. I would be finding people with the most in common with me and then reading their favorites to see if I can find new favorites. Like this is so good for me. Even though all the books aren't 5 stars, I've only actually found one 5-star. I haven't felt discouraged from the series at all. And I'm so excited to dive into Instagram. And I've realized that I've kind of ordered these in order of what is the most easy to find to most difficult, because algorithm wise and searching for things, obviously when I read my members, I had a spreadsheet. It was so easy to find people with things in common with me. On YouTube, I could search top books, favorite books, best books, and scrub. It took some effort, but it was easy to find people with a lot in common with me because of like keywords and stuff. On Instagram, it has proven to be a bit of a challenge to find the content that I want. And I just have this feeling there are hundreds of people out there who've been posting their favorites and I just haven't seen them. And then TikTok next time around is absolutely proving to be the most difficult to find people with things in common with me, but I am working on it. For Instagram, there are a couple people who were also in last year's video. So we're gonna start with them, I think. We have Roxanne. Actually, this lighting is horrific. Let me move. Oh no. Here, I'll put it over here. Roxanne listed her favorites, and on this slide, like, check it out. Maybe if you don't know my reading, you don't know anything about me, you're new here, I'll tell you. These are so many of my favorite books. Monstrilio, I Was a Teenage Slasher, The Haunting of Velkwood, Woman Eating, and Our Wives Into the Sea. Those were all 5 stars. And then there's Margot's Got Money Troubles and Catalina. I don't really know what either of those are, but there are more slides to go through. This slide, oh my god, Happiness Falls, loved it. Chain Gang All Stars, loved it. Minor Detail, fantastic. The God of the Woods, fantastic. The Will of the Many, I just read in my latest video. So there are 5 things on this page that I love. And Funny Story was just okay. A Sweet Sting of Salt is it on my TBR shelf? I feel like it is. And then there's another page with 2 of my absolute favorite nonfictions, A Little Devil in America and How to Say Babylon. So I feel like people will tell me to choose Braiding Sweetgrass because I've had this recommended to me for years, and maybe that is the right decision, but I think I need to look into what some of the other ones are. I haven't made any decisions at this point. I'm just gonna go through it all with you, but I have reserved some stuff from the library, so I will be running out to grab that. I don't know, should I lean towards the romance things, the weirder things, the nonfiction? I don't know. I will tell you the cover of Catalina, it's so good. The golden green is really calling to me, and I think that might be one that I try the first chapter of. Next up, another person who was in last year's. Now this is a little bit questionable, okay? I recognize it because there are 2 things in Lindsay's favorites. This is Books and Lindsay that I didn't love, Middle of the Night and Bride. But, okay, The Eyes of the Best Part, I Was a Teenage Slasher, The Angel of Indian Lake, The Reformatory, Night Watching, Magnolia Parks, Pet Cemetery. Like these are not just favorites of mine, but a lot of them are unpopular favorites. Like they're not the most agreed upon, everybody loves. So because Lindsay and I have niche-er favorites in common, I really want to pick up the only thing that I haven't read here and I've never even heard of, called If You Can't Take the Heat. It looks like it's set in a kitchen. We're following a chef, like that seems fun. But then there's also an honorable mention stack. And while I haven't loved anything here, I could also pick Fang Fiction because that's on my TBR shelf. So if all else fails with the If You Can't Take the Heat book, which I looked on Goodreads and I feel like I think it had like 100 reviews, like no one's reading it. So I really want to take the recommendation for that. It wasn't a recommendation. I put no blame on any of these bookstagrammers if I don't end up loving these books, okay? And then next up we have Emily. Emily I have followed for years on Instagram. Emily always shares the most beautiful photos of the Literally Dead Book Club pics and I love her so much. And she posted a series of favorites just like I did, like every different genre is here. Now these are a little bit worrisome because there are also things that I disliked here. But in order to find people on Instagram with so many in common that I loved, I just had to find people who also loved things that I didn't. So check it out. She's got Throne of the Fallen and Emily Wild's Encyclopedia of Fairies in Favorite Fantasy of the Year. And like, same. But then also an Academy for Liars. So I probably shouldn't take fantasy recommendations. Then there's horror. We both loved The Shining, A Dowry of Blood. We Used to Live Here. I was a teenage slasher. And then she also loved The September House and Diavola, which I didn't, but not for reasons that are like, these are so atrociously written. The themes were great in them. I remember liking things about them or seeing what other people could love in them. So I'm not questioning Emily's taste with that at all. So the only option for me to read here would be Dead of Winter, which people I feel like have recommended and disrecommended to me at an equal rate. So I don't know. She also has a romance page, which does include two things that I liked, The 7-Year Slip and Kiss Her Once for Me. But there are some other questionable things. So we're gonna ignore this. We're also going to ignore sci-fi. I could read A Ministry of Time, or The Ministry of Time, maybe I should, but I didn't love Antibot, but Project Hail Mary was great. So there's a mix here. What we have to go with, statistically, is the mystery thriller stack, because there's nothing in here that was too questionable for me. The last one by Will Dean is here, Night Watching, The God of the Woods, Listen for the Lie was like a 3, A Dangerous Collaboration, fantastic, Veronica Speedwell, and Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers. So what I have to choose from here is Good Girl, Bad Blood. Blacktop Wasteland would be a good pick, but I didn't love the last S.A. Cosby I read, so I don't want to set myself up for failure. I think Stillhouse Lake is the way to go by Rachel Kane. I've seen this around. If I look at it on Goodreads, so many of my friends have given it a high rating, but I just feel like I've never seen anybody really talk about it or gush about it. So this is my moment to read it. I really hope I'm making a good decision here. Next up, we have Chloe. Chloe shared 12 favorite books. And again, this very first slide, several people are typing Ripe, House in the Cerulean Sea, Chlorine, A Little Devil in America. Like these are all 4.5 and 5 stars. Mostly 5 stars. So Transcendent Kingdom is Calling to Me by Ya Jessie, but I didn't like the last Ya Jessie I read. Chloe's Instagram is Star Planet Books, if I didn't mention that. Check out this slide. Severance, Leave the World Behind, The Writing Retreat, and We Spread. 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. So obviously, Land of Milk and Honey, I feel like this is it. I feel like this is the one for me. Then we also have honorable mentions, and A House at the Bottom of the Lake is here, which is like an all-time favorite. The Husbands, one of my favorites of 2024. The Blue Book of Nebo, one of my favorites of 2024. The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich was 4 stars. So here I could pick Big Mall, which I've never heard of, but I feel like now I need to. And The Whole Picture, which is the colonial story of the art in our museums, which is interesting. There are too many options here and I'm already overwhelmed, but I feel like no matter what I pick from Chloe, it's gonna be a win. Now lastly, we have Alexa, Reading from the Vault. And Alexa shared a 2024 favorites stack, but also did individual posts for various genres. With horror, we align so much. Natural Beauty, horror movie, The Eyes of the Best Part, Knock Knock Open Wide, Mayfly, Tender as the Flash, The Angel of Indian Lake. So I feel like I can't go wrong with picking Rainbow Black. In fact, this is a book I've borrowed and given back to the library multiple times and just never got to. I don't even think I ever read the first chapter. Nestlings, I never finished, but I didn't love it. So maybe I should finish it instead. For nonfiction, A Little Devil in America, again, and A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, which I loved. So anything from here, Everything, Nothing, Someone, or The Sound of Gravel, or Becoming Abolitionists, like all of those could be wins. I'm gonna stay away from romance because Funny Story and A Novel Love Story were like 3 stars. Then we have sci-fi fantasy, and I love Station 11. I love the 5th season. I love Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, the whole series. So Plastic, I think I need to definitely look into. I love the cover. We also have thrillers. I loved Miracle Creek and Look Closer. Listen for the Lie was okay, so anything from here could be a good pick, maybe a little questionable. But then we also have honorable mentions outside of the genres. I loved The Wedding People. I loved The Husbands. I loved The Trees. I loved On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Interesting Facts About Space was just a 3, but whatever this is, Jonathan Abernathy, You Are Kind, I feel like it's for me. But then we also have favorites outside of just the genre. Some of the ones that have already appeared, but also Nothing to See Here is here, and Once There Were Wolves, and Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead, and Chain Gang All Stars. I loved all of those. So now I think I need to pick from here Martyr, and I've seen it everywhere and I still like barely know what it is, but I'm convinced that I'll love it once I read it. So those are the initial 5 people. I have no idea what to pick. I haven't made any decisions. I haven't read any first chapters. I haven't gathered too many of those. I have a few, but once I have like a whole stack and I can start like getting into them, I will check in with you. I'm overwhelmed, but very excited about this installment. So So I've decided I'm gonna start with Chloe, and I just got a snowfall warning. I think they send those out when it's like supposed to be more than 20 centimeters. So I'm trying to not, I brought my boots. I didn't wear them, I don't know why. Yes, I do, they were in the vehicle. I'm trying not to leave the house for the next like 48 hours if it snows like crazy, because I don't like driving in the snow. I think that's kind of a pipe dream, because I'm sure if it snows a significant amount, Liam's gonna wanna go snowboarding, so I'll probably end up going there. And also he has hockey games in other cities, but I figure if I go to the grocery store and I stock up and I don't have to leave the house for essentials, at least like that's a win. And while I'm here, I'm gonna listen to the first chapter of all 3, or was it 4 books that Chloe had that I have to choose from. And by the time I get home, I will have made a decision and then I can read physically. I just have a bunch of Spotify hours and I don't want to forget to use them. So this is a good way to use them, is to sample a bunch of stuff. So wish me luck on my little excursion. The snow has begun. It is snowing. It's that like icy snow that makes that really nice crispy sound. I'm home with all my groceries. I got, what am I trying to show you? It was a bag. I got really worried because I went to one grocery store and there was no bananas. It like completely out of bananas. And I overheard a lady going, is it because of the border or something? And then the person working was like, yeah. And then I was like, well, fuck. I can't live without a daily banana. So then I got like frozen bananas, which is not my preference or anybody's preference, I'm sure. I was like, I'll just grab a bunch of these, because really when you open this up, I'm pretty sure there's not even the equivalent of an entire banana in one of these. It's mostly strawberries. But I was like, I'll just survive on this. And then I thought, maybe I'll just stop by the other grocery store. My town has 2 grocery stores. Not to flex, 2 whole grocery stores. And the other one had the most beautiful bananas. Like so many of them, and they're stunning. So now I have a lot of bananas in my house. And I'm living in banana fear. I'll put away the frozen fruit first. That's really exciting. I got super chunky asparagus. Excited about that. The 3 dinners I'm planning are asparagus pasta, a Greek bowl, and then this like chicken honey salad thing. They were really limited in their greens, so I ended up getting like packaged lettuce and kale. I got a bunch of lemons, sweet potato, cucumber, oh, of course, Pocky. Eggs, because no one in town has eggs right now. Anything else interesting? Tahini, sesame oil, yogurt and milk. Yeah, this is not the most exciting haul. You want me to get to the books? I come to you with a decision made, and I think it's kind of an obvious decision. I don't know why it took me a while to really think it through, but maybe I wanted to read something that was more beloved or felt more important to read, but I'm gonna go with the sillier one. I read the first chapter, actually more than the first chapter of these, and I read the first 3 lines of Big Mall. Big Mall is a nonfiction. Obviously, to anybody, maybe that's really obvious and I'm just stupid. I thought it was gonna be some science fiction, like weird thing. It's a nonfiction about malls. It opened with her saying like, I've never felt more myself at a mall. And I was like, I don't think this is for me. It's about like consumerism and how malls make us feel bad, but we can't help return. And there's this obsession, and it's about like the climate around it, but also coming of age, like memoir, I think, kind of vibe. And it's just not something that I'm really interested in. I want to read Transcendent Kingdom. I just don't. We're following a woman who's ill, depressed, maybe suicidal mother is coming to live with her. And in the opening couple chapters, it was her reminiscing about her childhood, how she grew up, stories she heard about her father, and learning about her siblings. And it's also about her life, our main character, Gifty, as a PhD candidate. And we were following her, like doing her lab work and learning about what she was passionate about. And I want to read this, but I'm going to say I'm not in the mood for a general fiction. This one seems more in line with what Chloe and I have in common, Land of Milk and Honey by C. Pam Zong. We're following a character, I think they're going to remain unnamed, it's that type of story, and they leave the life that they've known for this chef job. They feel this like passion for getting access to the things that they've lost access to. We're in a dystopian setting. Smog has taken over. 90% of the crops are gone. But of course, in any dystopian, there is this wealthy elite that still has everything they've ever had before, is living a life of luxury, and she wants that kind of existence. Not that she is looking at going, I want wealth and status, and she just wants to be around the food that she grew up with, but also never really got access to in the same way that she desires. Like, her mother is from China, and there's a lot of culture infused in here in her childhood and the things that she ate growing up, but also just her mother prioritizing sustenance over joy is how she describes it. Using every single part of the animal, which totally makes sense. Using, like, when you soak beans in something, using that water after, like using every single aspect, not letting anything go to waste, and that's the priority in food. And our main character is like, I want to live a decadent life. I want access to the foods that nobody else has. I want to savor. I want to consume. So they basically apply for the chef job at this elite place, and I imagine it's going to go in a direction where, because she put on her application because she wasn't quite qualified for the job, that she was willing to do anything. And I think that is going to be taken advantage of, and her employer is going to start to ask things of her kind of in a natural beauty sense, I'm imagining, that seem unsafe, unhealthy, but I really don't know like what direction it's going to go in, how dark it's going to get. The concept is more interesting, more compelling than the writing is right now. Like, the book itself isn't the most engaging, but I really like the idea of it. So this is what I've committed to. I really hope it ends up with a high rating. Otherwise, I'm gonna feel like, I should have picked something else. I both love and hate having multiple options. Our main character has gotten really enamored with somebody else who's there, and it, for some reason, is just giving me like Veruca Salt vibes. There was a moment where they were going into this really fancy kind of residence where a lot of animals were being held, and it just made me think of Veruca Salt, who she wanted that like squirrel so bad. And she, in this universe, would have like one of every animal and everything she ever wanted, and just living this really lavish lifestyle. It's interesting following a character who's really established in this world and a character who is new to it, and getting to see it through both of their eyes. She has indeed been expected to complete some things outside of her original job scope, but it's not as like dark or intense or like depraved as other books that I've read, because I read a lot of books where this is the plot. A woman goes into an unfamiliar environment and gets sucked in by the prestige of it, or a certain enigmatic person, or like there's just something luring her in, and then it gets really dark and there's all of these reveals. This isn't that. So it wouldn't appeal to those people necessarily who love it getting really, I don't know, gratuitous, but also I don't know that it's so well fleshed out, the world, that the people who love really thorough apocalypse books would then love it. So I don't really know who I'm going to recommend this to, but I am enjoying it. I recommend it to myself. If you and I have identical taste, pick it up. Okay, this was not exactly, well, I didn't know what it was, so it's not the exact book that I expected to do. Once I started reading it, it turned into not exactly the book that I was expecting. It was really beautifully written. I think some people might not like the dialogue. It's written in italics because you're not really in the story, you're reflecting on something the entire time. The perspective is interesting. I don't know that I expected the direction this went in. I think I was thinking something more, oh my God, what's gonna happen? But I'm still absolutely giving it a 4. There were certain scenes in here that are gonna stick in my memory for a long time. I would recommend it more to like a literary fiction fan as opposed to a science fiction fan. This was in the, I want to say 2023 Goodreads Choice Awards. Didn't think I would ever read it, but I did, and I had a good time. So now Bookstagram officially has 4 points, and it needs to get a lot more in order to beat out the other ones. I started If You Can't Take the Heat this morning, and I got a couple chapters in. And I can't stick with it. I'm not really into it. It's like another book that takes place in a kitchen, which I just read, so it's not like grabbing my attention right away. Also, it's YA, which I definitely should have done my research with that. Lindsay has quite a few YA books in her favorites. I was just looking through because I need to pick something else now. I don't know, it was just like a teenage boy and he was hanging out with his friends. It was set in the 80s. And there are things that were interesting, but the character voice, I just grabbed the audiobook, wasn't doing anything for me. He was just talking about like girls they wanted to hang out with and who he was gonna date, and he met this girl and he's kind of enamored by her. And now, I don't know, there was nothing doing it for me instantly. So reading a teen book and reading a romance, like the combination of that, if I didn't like it by the end, I would have said to myself, and you would have said to me, you should have just picked something else from the beginning, especially one that's hello already on your TBR. This wasn't on my physical TBR, but the library had it, so I got lucky with that. The one on my TBR is A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer, and I always mix them up because the color palettes are similar. I'm interested in this because I love a vampire story and I love a book about books. In here, it's a similar premise, I think, to a novel love story by Ashley Poston, which I didn't like. But since so many people did, and then so many people don't like this, I feel like this makes more sense for me. So it's like a woman, equally as that one was, who goes and finds out that her favorite book series is actually reality and gets to like exist in that fantasy world. But because this one has like darker topics, we kick it off with a woman who has been sexually assaulted. And I think it's really taking the idea of reading for escapism to a whole nother level. She is struggling and she is being confronted with that and him. She dropped out of school. Her life has been really shaken up, and it's not vividly describing that. And there's even a really great author's note at the beginning talking about how she's taking care to avoid any graphic descriptions or triggering language and wants it to be joyful and empowering. But because like that's where things kick off, I imagine in the range of vampire stuff from like cozy, silly, stupid to like dark, violent, intense, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I'm hoping for that. I don't want to accidentally read something that's the vibe of My Roommate is a Vampire again, because that was not my favorite time. It was just too silly and fun, and I think that this will toe the line a little bit more. And I like the writing. I read the first couple chapters. We're getting a podcast that talks about the whole concept. So it's not just her who understands these vampires are real, but there's these theories online, people reading this book series and wondering if it was inspired by real people, and people finding proof that the people in these books were inspired by these real vampires. And then we also get excerpts from the book series called Blood Feud. So there's a mix of things going on. I love mixed media. As long as this is tonally what I'm hoping for, I can't imagine I dislike it, especially because Lindsay loved it. Why am I remembering Lindsay loving My Roommate as a Vampire too? Was that in her favorites last year, or did I make that up? Oh shoot, yeah. It was in her honorable mention stack from last year. Anyway, I hope I don't let Lindsay down. Very brief update. I'm halfway through and this is gonna be a 3. Like, it just, at this point I've gotten the vibe for what it is. Things are happening a little too quickly for me. She's just like, meets her vampire, like meets a vampire she's been reading about her entire life. The vampire's like, I'm a vampire. And she's like, oh, crazy. And then they're like off in this like magical world, which is like fun, but I don't know. I wanted it to take itself a little bit more seriously. There's just such a fine line between like stupid fun or delightful fun and like just fun, like wacky fun, but not like cutesy fun. And I feel like even though we're dealing with vampires and if the book feels like it wants to be intense, it's definitely not. Like the actual dialogue and scenes are just a little too like cutesy fun, and I can't distinguish it any better for you than that. That's where I'm at. I'll eat my words if the second half of this blows me away, but I think it's fine. I cannot find any technical flaw with this, so my rating just doesn't seem completely fair. I'm gonna give it, I can't give it a 3. I can't. I have to give it like a 2.75. I want to give it a 3. It feels kind of objectively like a 3. I just think it was adequate. It was fine. It was satisfactory. It was just so exactly what you expected it to be. So that's not a bad thing. It's just, it hit all the beats it wanted to and it needed to. It featured like the proper stakes. It had a relationship to root for, a bad guy and a good guy, for her to not only like decide romantically between, but to play off of one another in the action scenes, of which there were some. There was just enough conversation scenes and exciting scenes. There was a warm friendship, a woman who has experienced trauma finding a way to feel safe and feel loved and get everything that she deserves, and everybody she encounters wants the best for her and like loves her. But then it was also quirky like it wanted to be. It had like little quizzes, and the podcast element had moments that felt a little bit satirical, like it knew what it was doing, taking typical podcast tropes and playing off of them. And if you've watched a lot of vampire TV shows, you could recognize, you know, like what characters were meant to represent who and how it wanted to play off of certain things. It was all just like fine. I was just there. I was just witnessing it. I didn't love anything about this, and good God, this was too long. Like nearly 400 pages was not necessary for this story, especially when the moments that did happen, certain things have felt like they happened a little too quickly, like her even entering the world, just accepting the fact that there are vampires and not really having any qualms about it. Certain romantic relationships she got entangled with. Those happened so quickly considering we had 380 pages to get there. But I would still really recommend this. I think it's perfectly palatable. I think people will like it, or already are liking it. It was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, a little bit serious. Maybe the tone didn't work perfectly for me, but I really can't pinpoint exactly what it was. It just lacked any oomph. And I think I need something with a little more grit to it. So I have good news and bad news, and it's the same piece of news. And that's that there are multiple books that I'm interested in. That's difficult because having to choose one is annoying, but it's obviously good because I have many books that I'm interested in that like I want to read in my life. So even after I make this decision and the video ends, I get to continue and pick up some of these like later on for something else, just for myself. But it's just bad because like I don't know the right decision, and if it doesn't get such a high rating, then I'll think I should have read one of these ones instead. But I think I've made the decision to go with Martyr, just because it's so many people's favorites, but there's also such a good chunk of people who are like actively hating on it, and that makes me want to read it more. But first, let me tell you about the quick other things that I attempted. Jonathan Abernathy, You Are Kind. I just think this is beautiful. It sounded so interesting. The first chapter I gave an 8 out of 10. I think it set up some things that sound interesting. There's a man who is being hired to clean up people's dreams. So surreal from the very beginning. And he wanted to impress the recruiter. He was trying to get this job. He's not super qualified. And that's just what we got dropped into. And I'm intrigued to continue. Rainbow Black, I also gave an 8 out of 10. This one, this woman was having a childhood memory of her mom fainting at like a theater and then hearing gunshots, and then her dad like came and picked her up and freaked out, and it's been shrouded in mystery ever since, like that one event. Then there's a little bit of allusions to her in adulthood or adolescence being charged, I read this a little while ago now, being charged with a crime, and I just like the narration style, and I'm intrigued about what the childhood was like and what life is like now. It says a horrific murder brings Lacey to the breaking point. She makes a ruthless choice that will haunt her for decades. So those two intrigued me right off the bat, and I was like, okay, let me just continue, see if I can find anything better. So I read the first chapter of Plastic. Hated it. What was that? Like, what was that? Maybe it's just the audiobook because I don't have the physical version. And maybe the narration changes, right? I don't know, but it put me off this book so hard. Like, I just hated the style of it. It was very stilted language. The dialogue was like not proper sentences, and like that's a stylistic choice for sure and intentional, but I really hated listening to it. I truly couldn't even pay attention to what the book was about because I was so distracted by the way that it was written, and that could definitely be the audiobook. Could not continue with that. Then I listened to the first chapter of Martyr, and I gave it a 10 out of 10. We have this guy who's working in like a hospital as a trainee helper, and he has to act as if he's a bereaved patient, and it's like training hospital workers to communicate properly. And so he has to put on all of these different personas, and sometimes he gets really into them. It was an incredible opening scene. I really, really loved it. And then he went to an AA meeting after that. So the book is about addiction. It was very intense. Like, all of these conversations that he's having in the first couple chapters are very intense. In fact, I think I want to get the physical version because listening to it, I don't know, it's just every conversation feels very, I can't think of a better word than intense. He's having a chat with a friend about life and this desire to die and being a martyr, wanting to die for a cause. That was very intense. So that is my pick. I think I'm going to listen to the audiobook like just a little bit more because that's just what I'm gonna be doing for the next couple hours, and then I'm gonna head to the bookstore and I think I'm gonna grab it. I hate when I don't go outside for like 48 straight hours, and I forget the reason that I wasn't going outside is because it was snowing, but I forget that the outside is cold, so I'm not dressed for the weather, like at all. But I'm also not like spending time outside. I'm just like popping into a store and then popping into the library and then picking up Liam from school. So like I don't need to have a winter coat on. But it is actively snowing and I should have a toque on. I'm wearing leggings. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I am so very glad that I picked up the physical copy of this. There's gonna be things that I'm gonna wanna highlight, I think, in the second half. This section I love so much. I'll explain the context in a moment. Someone just pulled up beside me. I guess I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to 10,000 people. Also, it just looks like I'm talking to you, right? He felt a flash of familiar shame. His whole life had been a steady procession of him passionately loving what other people merely liked, and struggling, mostly failing, to translate to anyone else how and why everything mattered so much. I love that. So he just went to meet this woman. I imagine it's inspired by, did you ever see that performance art thing of that woman who sat in the museum and she had like a silent minute with everyone who came in, like they sat with her and she just like held their hands or whatever and they just sat there in silence for a minute. It was just a cycle of people. She went viral because I think like a lover of hers from 20 years ago showed up, and her whole purpose was being silent, and it was like challenging her being able to be silent. Anyway, so there's this woman who's dying of cancer, and she's putting on a similar performance art piece in a museum, and Cyrus goes to visit her because he's researching martyrs. This is something that he's really focused on and writing about, and wants to dedicate his death to something that matters. And I think this is my favorite type, and that's a conversation they had together. This, if I'm gonna pick up general fiction, this is something, a style that I like, that's like relatable in a way, and covers like universal truths, but is focused on such an unrelatable character. He's going through something very specific that makes it unrelatable, but what it's featuring is like that time in life, I think he's in his 30s, where you've gone past like the years that you have this like childlike wonder and look at the world, and then in your 20s where you have this like, I mean for a lot of people, like a blind optimism that life could go in any direction. And then once you're in your 30s, I feel like a lot of people feel like they're kind of settled and kind of everything's just normal and steady, and you start to wonder, is this all there is? Like, should my life mean more? Am I supposed to do something more with my life? And that's what he's grappling with, but it's a deeper version of that. It's a more extreme version of that, because obviously he is seeking out martyrdom and wants his life to really mean something, and is now planning the end of his life and is trying to figure out what to do with it, what impact to make, what message to send, what to support in that moment. So we're following him as he's grappling with these things, and I think the physical book is working better for me because there are moments that aren't from his perspective, are some of his writing or is from somebody else in his life. And I found that in the audiobook, maybe my attention span is lacking a little bit this week. And halfway through a chapter, I'd be listening and it would say Cyrus's name. And I like at that moment didn't even realize that we weren't from Cyrus's perspective, like someone else was narrating. So I'm reading back a little bit and I'm enjoying it more physically. And this is how I'm going to finish it out today, but I'm having a great time with it. Oh, and what I meant to say was that woman, the performance art piece that she's doing is more, it's the opposite of the thing that the woman did in real life. It's a conversation. She's sitting there and she's just open to anybody coming in and having a conversation with them. So that's what a lot of the beginning of the book was focused on, was him getting into contact with this woman, wanting to talk to her, feeling like she was going to impact his life in this great way. And she's kind of challenging that. She's like, I'm not some incredible person. I'm not doing this great service. This is just something that I'm doing. Meanwhile, he sees her as this like incredible figure who's like changing people's lives by offering this conversation. And maybe it will change his and maybe other people, but that's not necessarily what her goal is. So when he's witnessing all of these people, I think he's learning things that he didn't expect to from them. I just finished Martyr by Kaveh Akbar, and I fear I'm going to have an unpopular opinion. Perhaps like the unpopular opinion about this book, not in rating. I think it was phenomenal. I'm giving it a 4.25, a very specific rating, because there's an aspect of this book, a reveal, that I'm sure so many people love and think is fantastic, and I just don't think that the book needed. And I recognize that it is the intent of the book. Like, it's not like this specific moment could be rewritten or changed because it's the intent of the entire journey that we're on. But I don't think we needed it. I think it had just as strong of an impact of a story without that thing being revealed. And I think I would have preferred it if it was something else. And it's really frustrating because this whole book is about art and appreciating art and respecting art, and I want to respect the art, but I just feel as though maybe this author had this plan for this entire story and couldn't recognize that it was good enough without that. Like, the dialogue and the plot and the scenes and just like the connection between people was strong on its own and was such a beautiful piece of work without needing that other element. I'm not gonna call it a gimmick because, like, again, it's not like an oh my god plot twist. Like, it is, but that's the whole point of the book. I don't think there's anything wrong with what it was, and I'm so sorry for being so vague, but I really think people should read this, and especially because I think people will love the reveal. Like, I'm not going to give it away to anybody who would potentially want to read this. I am having a reaction just to acknowledge it in case you're staring at me going like, what happened? I think I confused people really quickly, sidebar, when I went to my allergist appointment and I came out of it saying as expected, I'm not really allergic to anything. It's like the histamine thing and it's the whatever this thing is called, and I've really gotten that in check and I've worked on it the last couple months and I'm really happy with everything. But the test was about like food and environmental allergies. I'm still allergic to skincare that has like anything more than the simple makeup wipes and makeup remover that I've been using for the last 15 years. I always thought it was fragrance because fragrance can be like a whole mix of chemicals and like you never really know what it is, so I've just given out that blanket thing. But I tested a new face wash last night. I just on the bottom half of my face, and again, I am allergic and there was no fragrance in that one. So I hate how the Simple brand just like goes out of stock for months at a time in stores, and I never know like when it's coming, and I think I'm stocked up. I bought like 4 things last time and I ran out, and I tested one new one, and it's like the super safe, like good for all skin types and like good for eczema and like super safe one, and I still had a reaction to it. So I need to go out and find, I might drive like hours to other stores and try to find my brand. The allergy test I did was not a dermatologic one, and I still have sensitivity to that, and my patch test has proven I still have an issue. Okay, so with this, I just what do I want to say about it? I don't know. I just grabbed like a chapter 27 because I think chapter 27 was such a beautiful, there's just so much beautiful stuff that was said in here without reading like the entire 2-page thing. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't fuck or steal or kill, and you'll be a good person. 8 out of the 10 commandments are about what thou shalt not, but you can live a whole life not doing any of that stuff and still avoid doing any good. That's the whole crisis. The rot at the root of everything. The belief that goodness is built on a constructed absence, not doing. That belief corrupts everything, has everyone with any power sitting on their hands. A rich man goes a whole day without killing a single homeless person and so goes to sleep content in his goodness. In another world, he's buying crates of socks and Cliff Bars and tents, distributing them in city centers. But for him, abstinence reigns. And it starts out by the quote that when asked about the difficulties of sculpture, Michelangelo said, "It's easy, you just chip away all that stone that isn't David. I've always loved that quote. And then he says, I want to be the chisel, not the David. What can I make of being here and what can I make of not? He's clearly like grappling and struggling with so many things in life, like every single aspect of his purpose. And I just love the journey that we're on. I think it's beautiful. I think it's sad. I got every feeling that the book wanted me to get out of it. And I completely agree with everybody saying this is a beautiful piece of work. And it's no doubt going to be something that I recommend more than like most anything this year. So that's that. I went to the library and I grabbed Stillhouse Lake. I have some reading sprints later today with my channel members, and I'm going to see how much of this I can read, maybe all of it. I'm just now realizing I didn't read the synopsis of this, and so I just did. And it says, we're following Gina, a shy Midwestern housewife with a happy marriage and 2 adorable children. But when a car accident reveals her husband's secret life as a serial killer, she must remake herself as Gwen Proctor, the ultimate warrior mom. Welcome back, everybody. Rob was startled by the cat. I hope everyone's reading went well. That was our final sprint, and I'd love to hear how everything went for you. I only got like 40 pages into my book, and I don't know, it's kind of an exhausting read. It's one of those styles where we have a narrator who's constantly like, I have to keep my life a secret, but I can't tell you why. I have to do all of these things. I have to make sure I'm prepared all the time. There are all of these people after me, and you know why. We have to like be super safe, and like maybe, I don't know, I wasn't liking it physically really, and then I'm not really liking the audiobook either. So it's just, I think, the book in general and the perspective that we're from. This woman has 2 children and her husband has killed some people, and so now there are all of these like fanatics online trying to find the family, blame the family, so they have to like keep a really low profile, and her daughter's pushing against that, and she is very much like, well, you know why we have to be super safe, and you know why all these rules are in place, and blah 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 blah. And it's just like, that's all the book has been for 50 pages. And I'm sure it's gonna like take a turn, and there's gonna be a mystery, and there's gonna be more thrills, but right now it's just like kind of exhausting. I'm in a head that I'm just not really enjoying. Yeah, but then I have to start something else. So my options for this this person, I can read Fourth Wing or Iron Flame, Dead of Winter, which I don't think I want to, a romance, which I don't think I should, Ministry of Time, which I don't think I should, Blacktop Wasteland, which I don't think I should. The only thing I could imagine switching to is maybe Ministry of Time, but then if I hate it, which I think I will because I already DNF'd it, if I pick it and then I finish it and I give it a low rating, it's like, well, I might as well have just finished Stillhouse Lake. Oh, you know what? That's interesting. Best books of 2023. We have Happy Place by Emily Henry. We align. Okay, great. Good news. The Caro Haunt, I DNF'd that. Fourth Wing, The X Talk. I should not do a romance. I know I should not do a romance. What if I just find something she gave 5 stars? We're just gonna find a 5-star from Emily. See, look how much we agree. Big Little Lies, Hunger, Dark Matter, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, Finley Donovan. Like, we're clicking. The Husbands, The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. She just gave The Favorites a 5-star. I feel like I could count it. Does anyone agree? Would you rather see me read The Favorites or Stillhouse Lake? I just need one person to agree. And that's all we need. I don't want to hate something. I don't want to hate something. It's absolutely not fair to the other groups, but I don't want to read this, and I make the rules. Oh my God. Okay. I don't even care that you can't see me or that I'm ruining the entire purpose and essence of this video series. I'm loving The Favorites. Oh my God. The chapter that just ended was chapter 25. So I'm 30% of the way through. I'm devastated. This book has me so fucked up. I love Lane Fargo's writing and her like cutthroat protagonists, even if it causes me pain. This is so unlike They Never Learn. It's, well, I guess there's like a kind of mystery in the background, but it's not a thriller at all. It's not suspense. Well, I feel a little bit of suspense because like clearly something happened to like cause disruption. You can't see me at all. In like the skating world. And we're slowly creeping towards that time. We start out with these two main characters. They meet when they're very young children, Kat and Heath. And Heath kind of becomes a part of her family, but they're also romantically linked. Like they're kind of a couple from a very young age. And we start to follow them, well, in their childhood, but then once they start figure skating and they're like, we're following them as they're teens and they start to get these opportunities and they become really good together and get like closer to the Olympics. And that's what we're like building up to right now. I want to say they're 16 at this point, and they have other opportunities in the skating world, and like maybe one is better than the other. And they are so like connected and also have like a bit of a trauma bond, but they're like a little bit toxic for each other. Like they're not making the best decisions, they're not always the nicest, but they're not like, they are a couple that you really root for. At least I am at this point. And oh my god, it felt really intense. I imagine this is like Lane Fargo's version of what Taylor Jenkins Reid is doing, where it's set in a specific world, like Daisy Jones and the Six and like the 70s or 80s like rock scene. And so there's like familiar people and bands. And then also with the like tennis stuff that she's doing, if you really follow tennis closely, you can recognize certain like characters who are representing real life figures, or like some things in history feel familiar. I imagine, I haven't read those ones, but in here it's like there's certain people mentioned and there's certain events in the skating world that feel familiar, and I just feel so invested a third of the way in of what on earth is going to happen between these two, the things that they're about to go through in life, and like how far they're going to go in the skating world. And then also there's this vibe, I can't remember, the book opened up with well, it's also being told, you're getting a whole bunch of different narrators and people being interviewed as like a documentary about what happened. And every step along the way, there are people who pop in and narrate like how they felt at the time, how they were viewing these two, watching their rise to fame and how they impacted it and how they were friends with these people. And I can't remember, but it opened up with like some type of mysterious thing. Like why, I guess the question is, why was it a documentary? Is there somebody who, I can't remember, but like did somebody die or is somebody injured, or like something really intense must happen at some point in the story. And I can't wait to find out what that is. I'm kind of enamored with this story. And again, general fiction is not really my number one thing that I pick up. So I'm just glad that I really want to read it. I'm headed out. I have to pick up Liam and some friends at the mall. And then I am hunting around for my skincare brand. I will buy it from just about anywhere. So I'm popping into some different places and I'll update you on my book. I wonder, should I buy it physically while I'm out? I don't know. Yeah, I bought it. I had to have it. I am loving this book. I think it's great. And what I think is really interesting to think about is how things are being framed to us. So we're reading the documentary and the interviews, and obviously everybody wants to come across a certain way, and things are definitely, I'm sure, being like withheld from us. Again, it's not really a mystery or thriller or anything like that. But clearly through these interviews, people want to seem better than they are or whatever. And that's just an interesting thing about while we're reading them. But even further, we have one narrative from Katerina's perspective. And I think you could apply that to hers as well, because she is telling us through her own eyes what happened and what she went through in life. And she's a very tunnel visioned character. So the impact that she has on people is not really her main focus. It's her drive for success and the people who are falling by the wayside on her way to the top. And so even the ways that she is telling us the story, I think could be interpreted differently. Like things that she's saying to people, the way that she's perceiving other people in this competition may have been impacted differently than we even get to understand, because we have such a narrow viewpoint of what she's doing. A lot of times she's not really willing to take blame for things. And I just love a competition. I think other people might find this repetitive because they're going through different competitions and it's just like, oh, we're going for practice and I'm skating with this person and I'm talking to this person and the next day it's the same person and the same person. And it's about the opportunities. It's a little bit about fame, but I don't think that's overtaking it, which I really appreciate. Yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up now and give you my final rating. I had to buy it because I know it's gonna be at least a 4 and I wanna own anything that I gave a 4 or 5 this year. And this is one of them. I have a lot of thoughts about this. I have so many things that I want to say and I don't know if I can gather them all. I'm giving it a 4. I really wanted it to be a 5 and I thought it could be a 5. Still like so good. So good. I don't know if it met its fullest potential. Like the first half of this was one of my first halves of a book like ever. Like I was so enamored. I have not wanted to get through a book so badly in a while. But I also think that it could have been a little more epic. And now there is this comparison because it's inspired by Wuthering Heights, which like, it's not an epic romance, but I think it wants to be an epic romance, especially when you consider the marketing. To the world, they were a scandal, to each other, an obsession. I don't know, I wouldn't call this a romance. Like, yes, there is a love story, but I wouldn't like recommend this primarily to exclusively romance readers. And I think that these two main characters, actually everybody in the book, is a very exaggerated version of themselves. And they kind of just take on one almost stereotype and just exist as that in the story. And there could have been more depth. I could see people saying that these characters read very one-dimensionally and that's a reason that they don't like it. I just think there was like the opportunity, especially in the second half, to delve more into things, like give them more of a personality, just get into more stuff. What I really liked is that this was a story about like power and success, but it wasn't necessarily about fame when it could have been. There was a little bit of that, like people in their lives dealing with their fame and their level of fame, but it didn't turn into that being the story. It was still very much like the focus on the competition and their relationship with one another. I think with the word obsession, it almost sounds like it's going to be a darker, more intense story than it is. To me, these two are more of each other's like comfort person, and they can't help but fall into hurting each other so easily, because it's almost like they've been together for so long and they're so connected, and they exist like a unit, that it's so easy to hurt each other in the same way that it's easy to self-sabotage, because I don't know, maybe you don't like fully respect yourself or one another, and you can fall into destructive tendencies, and you know that the other person will like always be there no matter what. And so it's like constantly pushing and testing and seeing how far you can go and still feel loved by that person. But even with that said, like it doesn't go as dark and as intense as you might expect it to be. And the thing is, there's like not always a lot of repercussions, and therefore I think people could also take issue with that, where this isn't like a moral lesson. That's not the point of this. And there's some messiness that remains by the end. And I just had a really good time. I think this is great. Maybe should I give it more than a 4? No. I think it's a 4. It's a really solid 4, but it could have been like one of my favorite books of all time. We were really going in that direction. So I can't help but feel a little disappointed, but overall I have such fond feelings of this, and I'm really glad that I gave it a read. I think I've made a decision. I'm not sure you're gonna like it. The amount of people who've been telling me for years to read Braiding Sweetgrass, this is really gonna be the ultimate betrayal, because this is my moment to read it and I'm not choosing it. I think I'll read it someday. It's about connection with the earth, and I just don't think I'm in the mood for nonfiction right now. Maybe once I get to the TikTok video, I have an idea for that. The other books that were options were about like pregnancy. I read the first chapter of 2 of them, and I don't know if I really want to read them right now. The one that I thought was a little bit speculative, I don't think actually is, but I'm really in a general fiction mood. So this is where it's taking me. I'm going to read Catalina by Carla Cornejo Villavicencio. I just listened to the opening as the audio. I listened to the opening as an audiobook and I liked it. I think I might go back and forth between the physical read and the audio read today while Liam has hockey. So I'll bring this with me, but I also have the audiobook. It says we have a miracle child who escapes death in Latin America, moves to Queens to be raised by her undocumented grandparents. I think that a story about immigration and being undocumented and the treatment of people is something that, I mean, valid all the time, but feels very relevant right now and in these times as things are bad for many, many people. And so I thought that meant a little bit of magic in the story, but I'm not getting that sense. It's just this story of, it deals with actually kind of similar topics as Martyr, not in a death way, but in a living your life with meaning. Our main character is admitted to Harvard. She feels like she has to fulfill a destiny. Everyone tells her because she survived a certain tragic event and other people didn't, that she is meant for something greater, that she is a miracle. And so everyone around her is kind of setting her up for this perfect life and to be this like great thing. And she feels like she needs to fulfill that, but she also just has a really great like narration style. I love being in her head. She's very intentional about her life, and she's like, I felt as though I needed to experience heartbreak, and so this is the love story that I began. I felt like I needed to experience this in the world. I saw other people experiencing this, so I went to experience that. And she's just a very self-aware individual. It reads so much like a memoir that makes me wonder how similar Carla's life is. But then there was this one passage where she said she was reading someone else's story, and a quote from that author was like, oh, I wanted to tell my own story as a memoir, but I realized that fiction would be far more interesting. And I think that that's a really interesting way that I'm looking at this. So I'll be reading this on and off. I'm not sure if I'll update you before I actually finish it. This might be a very quick review. I gotta get out of here. And I just have a feeling I'm gonna love it. I finished Catalina. I have to keep my voice down a little bit because I fear I will wake up Robert. He's sleeping on the couch. He has a really bad cold and he has to sleep like sitting upright. So you're gonna hear him snoring. Sorry for the final clip, but I really want to get this video done. I am giving this a 4. I really liked it, and it was just my style as far as like just the inner ramblings of a main character. Very stream of conscious, low plot. I wouldn't say like high vibes. It's not about the vibes. It's about what the book wants to say. And I know this author has a nonfiction, and I was just glancing through reviews. I think I made a mistake looking at reviews, but a lot of the positive ones were talking about how they read that by her and they felt really similarly about these, that she was saying a lot of the same things in both of them, but this was a fictionalized take. And that's exactly how it felt. It felt like a vehicle for Carla to give her thoughts on the world and politics and America and the state of her own life and people around her. And for that, I just really enjoyed it. A lot of the negative reviews, I'm actually like annoyed by the negative reviews. Obviously you can have your own opinions, and this is supposed to be a video about joy and reading people's favorites. But a lot of people who rated this lowly talked about the fact that it didn't give them what they wanted as far as like a deep dive into immigrant culture and seeing like the real inner workings of like how somebody went from this to like overcoming the odds and becoming something incredible. And I just think it's so interesting that you read the synopsis that way and thought this book is going to be someone like performing for you, this like expected arc that you're looking for so you can like feel good about something. It's just a story of a girl, you know, like she's like having sex and deciding and going to class and deciding if she wants to cut her bangs or not. It's just like mundane life stuff, and that's life. Like that is real life. And every type of person in every place, in every situation, also just has real life stuff, just has like thoughts beyond, you know, ICE raids. Though she witnesses ICE raids, she is worried about people in her family being deported. She talks frequently about her relationship with the government. And so the fact that people didn't see that and like didn't get that from it just because it wasn't this exact story of perseverance and resilience, I don't know, like I guarantee the people who were writing those reviews, because it was mostly like old white men, definitely, if I looked, would have high ratings for other like white American men just writing about the mundane life activities. But because you're following someone who's undocumented, like they are then required to make this book a certain thing for you. I just saw words like unfulfilling pop up and I was like, it's so strange that I don't know, we just have very different interpretations of things. I'm so glad I liked it, especially because I'm gonna go out and buy it and have this on my shelves. This cover, the color is beautiful. The gold, the stars. It's another eyeball book, of course. And even though I cheated in the video, I think it will appease people that this isn't the winning video. Bookstagram didn't quite make it to the winning number. I didn't quite beat out BookTube, which totally makes sense because there was a 5-star there. I haven't found a 5-star since. It wasn't this one, but I thought it was very good. I read a lot of really good things in this video, and I don't know, looking at my options for TikTok, if that one is going to be the winner, but anything could happen. So thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another vlog very soon.